how many of you would be willing today to have some idea touch you so deeply that it could change your life? Yes. How many of you would be willing to just bring all of your awareness and all of your attention right here and allow that internal knower and voice to pick at least one thing out of the message to give to you today? Yes? Would you be willing to do that? Yes. Today's message, I've been preparing for a long time. Today's message is entitled Unhook and Live. The spiritual journey to the life more abundant. And so if it's okay, do you mind if I share a personal story or two? So as you know, almost a year ago, thank you, I left Fresno. I left this community that I love so dearly. And I left my house and sold my house and my car and a lot of my stuff and left my family and did the only thing that I was getting the guidance for, and that was to go on a trip. But wait, let's back up a minute. I don't think it started there. So let's go back a little bit further. About 6 months before that, I was in Mexico. And the truth is, and most of you know this, I was at a place in my life where I was burned out. I was tired. I was not inspired. And I was having a hard time inspiring others. Now, when your job is inspiring others, it's not really a good idea to be so uninspired. So I'm laying on a beach in Mexico, and I have this amazing idea that's like, go travel the world and go to the beaches of the world and just go on the beach, and you'll be healed. I'm like, you're right, God. That's a great idea. I love that idea. I want to do that. That's a great idea. I think I'll just leave everything and travel the world and go to the beaches of the world for a year, and then I'll be healed. Of course, I got home, and I realized that was a little harder than I thought. But wait, I don't think the story starts there. Let's go back about 3 years before that. 3 years before that, I went to Ecuador, and I went to a week's worth of shamanistic ceremonies, some deep inner work. And before you go on something like that, you are guided and you are supposed to set a really deep intention. And then I was going there to meet the goddess ayahuasca. For those of you that know who she is. For those of you that don't, she is an ancient goddess that they use in ceremonies in South America. She's actually a plant that you drink. It's a hallucinogenic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, but in the sacred ceremonies, she's called the goddess. And she takes you inside to have revealed what needs to be revealed. So I went with the intention, I wanted oneness with God. You know, I'm like, there's only one thing I want, and that's to have the pure, palpable, physical, spiritual experience of losing the self-identity, to merge with the divine. My deepest intention was that. So back to story one. Before that, how many of you have ever have felt like you've been on a journey? Right? Like your life is a spiritual journey. And so as I looked at this whole big picture and stepped back from this big picture, I really saw that there was a cycle, a life cycle being played out. And so if it's possible, I'd like to try to share these 5 steps of this cycle of our life's journey with this group in the next 20 minutes or so. Would that be all right? Right. So So step one leads in, as I was in this journey, and the intention was oneness with God. Step one on our own evolution, our own process, is desire. It's like something burning, some impulse for expansion is in us. How many have had that? Sometimes the desire is clothed as dissatisfaction and pain. But the desire under that is to move out of the dissatisfaction, correct? And out of the pain. So it's important for us, if we're in that dissatisfaction, is to not just focus on the dissatisfaction, but to begin to find what is wanting to emerge. What wants to be born? Because as long as we're not willing to go to step one and hear the voice of what wants to emerge in and through us, if we're not willing to hear that, we just get stuck and the dissatisfaction continues to grow and deepen, right? So it's important for us to listen to that. Where there's dissatisfaction, where there's, like nothing's, you don't know what's wrong, but something's not quite there. We open up, God, what is your vision for me? What wants to expand? What wants to be experienced? What is this desire that is calling me? And that's always step one. That's the urge, the divine urge that's calling us for greater. Now, I talked about this being this oneness for God. But this shows up in many ways in our lives. It might be this urge, this yearning for greater communion, a relationship. It might be an urging and a yearning for greater abundance because something in you knows that it's not God's will for us to be suffering and crawling on the ground and not having enough and struggling, right? There's something in you that knows that that's not the highest will for us. Like we somehow bought into a hypnosis of humanity, right? And as we begin to awaken spiritually, something in us is calling us for more freedom. I love that song, by the way. More freedom is calling us to begin to go on this journey. And so I invite us all, where is it that we're stuck? What's calling us? What wants to emerge? What wants to take form? What wants to expand? Because that's step one. So we want to listen to that step one. So step two. So back to Ecuador. So I'm in the middle of this sacred ceremony, and it just started, so I'm about an hour into this. And there's about 50 people, and we're in this big room, and all the lights are out. And in the middle of the room are this beautiful white roses and candles, and it's just beautiful. And the shaman is playing and singing these mystical, spiritual songs. And I'm looking at the roses and I'm looking at the candle, and I have the experience that there's God in the middle of the room. There's God. There's my oneness. There's God. And I know that if I can get over here and merge with God, I'm going to experience oneness with God. Well, why wouldn't I? I've been on ceremony 1 hour out of of starting a week. Why wouldn't I just go right to the end, right? And so I begin to have this experience of merging. Now, I'm not leaving. My body's staying there. But remember, this is an ayahuasca trip. And so my awareness is actually merging towards this light. And I'm just going, and I'm feeling more expanded. As closer I get to the light, I'm going to just merge with the divine. And all of a sudden, I begin to feel coming up around me like a snake, choking and gripping and pulling on me. All that is blocking me from my experience of oneness with God. I can't get there. Imagine if you're getting to your goal. There you want it so much. And then the ripping ropes and chains and shackles are grabbing a hold of you and you can't go. And I'm crying. I want to go so bad, but I can't get there. And it's like, what's holding me down? And I saw what was really holding me down was like all of my attachments from my ego's attachments to my identities, like my house and my car, because I had a really, really nice house. I had a very nice house. I lived in a good neighborhood. I had a really beautiful car, and those that know me, I kind of like nice cars, right? And I love my clothes and my image, and I'm like doing my business, and I'm just all of that and a cup of tea or whatever that is, right? Bag of chips, but I'm on a diet, always. I can't use that one. Anyway, so like I'm feeling this like, it was like everything. I can't even describe what it was, but it was like all my attachments to my earthly reality, all my attachments to my identities, my roles, my stuff, how people perceive me, how I live, like everything that my separate self, this personality, separate self attached to as what made me, was holding me back. And it was the most utterly horrific, hellish experience to be there and not be able to get to God, which was 6 feet out. Right? So step 2 on this cycle. I spent the next 3 to 4 years playing out. Step 2 to this cycle is called unhook. It's called unhook from all the ways that we are so attached to that which is not real. All the ways, not real. It's not, do you know what I'm saying when I say not real? It's not that it's not real and we're not having experience. It's not the source of our happiness. It's not the source of who we are. It's like my path was more severe than anyone else's, hopefully. You don't have to go up and give up your relationship and your house and your car and lose your job and move all away and have absolutely nothing but your suitcase. God, why did I? Now, we look at this idea of unhook. And this is a journey that we all must go through. It's called letting go, right? And it's about letting go of our attachments. Our attachments, anything that we have replaced as a source of our happiness, good, supply, anything that we have replaced God with. Remember the scripture, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all else is added. Every one of us goes through something like this in our cycle, in our journey of awakening. It's called change. It's called transition. It's called something that used to be there that I depended on and I thought was my source somehow isn't anymore. Right? How many of you have had that experience in some aspect of your life? Because it's a beautiful experience, because usually what it calls the human spirit to do is we have to replace it with something deeper. Now we can get stuck there. Human beings get stuck there all the time. Screaming and fighting and holding and grasping, and I'm going to hold on to it, I'm going to hold on to it. And that causes more, starts with an S. Stress. Suffering, stress, exactly. Yes. So this second stage is very, very important, and it's something we do regularly. It's like unhook. Am I doing something wrong? So what it really starts to be as well is unhooking from the conditioned mind of the human self. The conditioning, the beliefs, all that which doesn't serve the emergence of the higher self. It's a releasing and a letting go of that conditioning. And that conditioning is always revealed to us through our physical experiences so that we can see it. So we begin to see how it is I'm relying on this person, place, or thing for the source of my good, right? So this journey of unhooking, mine was a little more severe. But what starts to happen when we are willing to walk through the unhook is we begin to lighten our load. Freedom. So back to the story of being in Mexico. So I'm in Mexico and I get this vision to unhook. And that was the word that came to me. It was like go to the beaches, blah, blah, blah. But it was like unhook. Like I couldn't get that word out of my head. Unhook, unhook, unhook. And so it was like unhooking. And then through the next 6 months, this process of tiptoeing and figuring that out and going through that pain and trying to, work with this community. How can we all be happy and do this? How can we just do it? And they've done an amazing job. I just want to say thank you to and honor the Core Council and the community here that has really held things together. And I know how hard that they've worked. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So unhook. The step that starts to follow unhook is probably the most important. Many times the unhook happens whether we consciously choose it or not. Get laid off from a job, relationship ends, more dramatic things happen, there's an illness or a sickness, this stuff just kind of shows up. If we can recognize that it's like the soul's inner calling for some sort of unhooking, then we can move to step 3. See, even in the unhook, even in that urge, I realized just recently that the unhooking stage was a result of the really clear intention 3 years before that. That we, each person sets intention. You already stand in a deep intention, and then we forget when the job loses or the relationship or the sickness or the different things come in life. We forget. We don't ever think that maybe it's in response to an intention, and it's just a piece of the journey. It's not the end thing. It's just a piece. We can step back and go, oh, this is all part of it. So this is the unhook stage. That's what Reverend Janette, we're in the unhook stage. It's going to be okay. It's important. It's important. It's the releasing. It's the letting go. And then the next stage is what's really very important. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And this is where we really, really start to grow. And this is called the hook stage. This is where we hook up to God, to Spirit, to Source. When we unhook from something. So let's say I have a hook, okay? And I have my hook. Let's say I have my hook in my mother, okay? Like I'm growing, I'm a little child. I have my hook in my mother, don't I? Like I have my hook there. That's where my source is and that's where everything is. And then I have to separate from her in some way to live my own life. So I take this hook out. And then I unconsciously wander around saying, well, who can I hook into now? Who can feed me? Who can be my mommy now, right? Who can be my daddy now? Boo! That's why we get in all the trouble. So unhooking from some aspect of life requires us now to hook into something real. This is the path of spiritual progress. We must hook into the divine soul, the I am presence, God, however it is that we can experience a higher power that's bigger and more wise and knows all and is so much more expansive than our little self. And so we begin to hook into that. And this is where the journey teaches us. So back to story number 1. So, I took off and I went I discovered 5 different oceans of the world. Isn't that cool? Lived on 5 different oceans of the world, all gorgeous beaches, and traveled, etc. And it sounds all very glamorous, and it was a very beautiful experience. But let me tell you what, it's a little discomforting to travel out to foreign countries where English was never the primary language, to not know a soul, and to land in a place and to have to figure out my life in a suitcase. So do you think that I learned to hook into something real? Yeah, like God became my number 1. Like God became my everything. Like, what are we going to do now, God? Where we go now, better take care of me, better hold on to me, better guide me. And I learned along that journey that every piece was taken care of, and I never got it in advance. I hate that part. Why do we think we have to have it in advance, right? We have to have the whole plan. We don't have the whole plan in advance. That's why we learn to trust. We have to walk. We have to put one foot, I'm going backwards. Well, I went backwards many times. One foot in front of the other, right? We put one foot in front of the other, and we just keep moving forward. There wasn't a time in this hookup stage, after the unhook, okay, we think we're going to just feel good. This is the most uncomfortable stage there is. Because what was real, what was our security, what was our safety, and what was known was comfortable to us. But what is unknown, and when we are hooking into a new reality, it is an unknown reality. And we will naturally be afraid. I finally figured it out that every city that I went to, for 3 days, I was afraid. At first, I thought, I was criticizing, like, come on, pull it together, I'm like, I don't speak the language. I don't know where anything is. And I went to more third world countries, and so I didn't have the comforts of home. And of course, it shook my being a little bit. And once I figured out this is just what it looks like, I could roll with it. And then pretty soon I'm just walking down, hola, ¿cómo está? That's about it. Uno más cerveza, por favor. And so, it's like, the thing is and this is where I see my friends on the journey. This is where people fall. This is where I fell many times, because we feel insecure. It's frightening. And this shows up in our lives in regular things, just regular things, and job changes and relationship changes, and maybe the kids move away to college and you're used to being there. You used to have people in the house, now you're all alone in the house. Like, we have life's changes and transitions, and yet, and we're afraid. And this is the time we have to hook into the new thing. We have to take our hooks and start to get our own footing in our own being, and to be grounded in a reality that is real. Once we do that, we can begin to transition into the next stage. How many want to transition into the next stage? Right, yeah, like it's like you don't want to just be. I was in a surfing community a couple times, and it's like surfing's funny, kind of a funny thing, but I'm not a surfer, but you get out there and you wait for your wave and you wait, and then you get up there, and it's like kind of a balancing thing. I mean, think about it. You're standing up on a piece of wood on the ocean with waves that are completely undependable, and you're trying to stand up, right? And you can fall, and you do fall. So that's kind of like life, and especially in that third stage, you're hooking into something, but it's a little wobbly sometimes, right? So we get comfortable with the wobbly. So that begins to lead us to this next stage. And that stage is the fourth stage, where true self emerges. So it's been trying to emerge. It's been trying to emerge to be the dominant identity in our lives. But as long as we are hooked into the ego identity and stuck, we can't let it. So we go through the uncomfortable zone, where we trust and we rely, and we trust and rely, and we trust and rely. And pretty soon, true self begins to emerge, and it begins to lead, and it begins to be the active guidance in life, and where we're not even really conscious of making a decision, but we're just kind of walking down the right path. And we begin to feel a power that we didn't have before. It's not the old egoic power that could accomplish a few things. It's the true self that's beginning to emerge and be the right foot, the step. It's the one that begins to take the step. So in this journey over the last year of going forward, I mean, it was like for the first 6 months, it was in that like kind of hook in, nervousness, kind of fear, trepidation, hook in. And pretty soon, I don't know, this true self began to emerge. It began to be more present, more there, right? So of course, my all plans changed in an instant, and I decided to go to India and go to the Oneness University for a month, and that's where I began to have the real deepening into the true self, the real experience, where I really experienced that which I had called forth, 4 years before that with the shaman. Is there time in spirit? No. It's all the same. It should be happening sooner. Should have happened in Ecuador. No, it's happening now, right? So beautiful experience, which I shared last time I was here in India, where I really had that awakening experience of really watching the separate self dissolve and moving into that oneness with God and experiencing that. The true self begins to emerge, and what comes in with this true self is a strength, and is a power, and is a responsibility. And so that leads us into the fifth step. The fifth step is, I'm calling, empowered action and demonstration. This is where it's like Rumi's saying, he says, you were not born to crawl, you were born with wings, so use them. Right? As the true self emerges, there comes with that a divine authority that refuses to buy into the human limitation and the human hypnosis of lack, limitation, hatred, sorrow, sickness, blah, 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 and begins to lead from that consciousness that will take empowered action in the world to live as the I Am presence, to call forth that which is God, which is always good, to call forth, to declare, to demand, to acknowledge that God's perfection and wholeness is right here. But see, what we've learned in Science of Mind, is so beautiful. It's that we must call it forth. That the divine stands fully formed, fully perfect, but as human beings, we must grow in our own divinity and dare to call it forth, to claim it, to stand in it, to call it into form. For God's good is already created. Everything is created already. Everything is already created. Now, if we are knowing and standing in the true self and it is emerged in us, are we going to waste our time calling forth sickness? In other words, looking at it, worrying about it, blah, blah, blah. No, even if the body's sick, we begin to call forth health. Even if we're lonely and alone, we're not going to fall in that because we know that God is our source. I can never be lonely. And I call forth that I am an experience and an expression of God, sharing God's love wherever I go, and I am never lonely in God. Right? Yeah, right. And I can stand on 2 feet. Grounded. And so we go through this journey. How many can recognize the elements of this journey in your life? Because this is a spiral. This is a spiral journey. We don't go through this journey once in our life. I mean, we might look back and go, it all kind of fit into that. But this is a journey that's going on all the time. And how we fail is we forget step 3. And we don't hook into the real truth. To make that relationship the number one relationship. Or we forget to call forth the good. We will be the empowered true self beings that we know in our heart that we really are when we're willing to unhook, let go, Clear, slash it away, clear, unhook from all of that, which we have believed incorrectly is our truth. We have believed incorrectly that the egoic needs are our truth, when the truth is the only thing we need is love, power, wisdom, grace, and it shows up. God shows up in the physical form in all the needs that we need. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else is added. Do you think I'm afraid that I'm not going to ever have a car, a house, a man, a job again? Of course not. I'm not. There was a time. But when we tap into that and we understand the law, we call it forth and we just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Right? Yeah. Right. So, take a breath and allow this to penetrate. Ask your own higher self to give you what's yours. Where are you? What will help you move to the next step? What will help you move gracefully into the next phase? In the next phase, which is always greater freedom and greater life. That source is yours. It's there. So would you be willing to get on your feet? Would you be willing to give me something? So I want you to feel the earth, okay? So we're going to tap into our power. How many have power? How many want some of theirs? You don't need theirs. You're not hooked into them. You're hooked into God. So let's do it, okay? So we feel the ground underneath our feet, and we begin to feel that I am grounded, and I am secure, and I am right here. Okay? You got that? Yeah. And we begin to ask, what is it that wants to emerge in my own life? What wants to be born? What desire? What unfolding wants to take place? Just be open to it. You might use your hands in an open palm position just to be open. You may know what it is now and you may not. It doesn't matter. It's that you're just open to the intention revealing itself at some point. And then it's like, what must be released? What must be unhooked? And just take the hooks out of your head and take the hooks out. Just imagine that you're just unhooking. You're unhooking. So we're unhooking from our attachments. We're unhooking from the things that we think are the source of our good. We're unhooking from the attachments. It's our mental attachments. It's not like we unhook and not have to have a job. It's unhooked from our attachment that job is our source and not God. You get that? So we unhook from our attachment. So just let the hooks go. Just let everything go and begin to feel a freedom. And now I want you to just go ahead and take a nice hook right in front of your heart. And let's take this hook and let's take the hook and hook it into our own heart. Let's hook into here. Let's hook into God. Hook into the I am presence. Hook into the divine source within us. Okay? I'm hooked into God. Say that. I am hooked into God. I am hooked into the I am. Yeah. And then just feel into that. And then let your hands come up and just begin to feel the divine true self emerge. The divine true self emerging. And then begin to open your eyes and stand in empowered action and demonstration that I am an empowered being demonstrating God's will. Let's say that together. I am an empowered being demonstrating God's will. I am so grateful. I say thank you, God. I say thank you, God. And together we say, thank you, God. And so it is. Yes. Thank you.